Today, the Red Tent is a massive community tapestry composed of red fabric that has been contributed to by hundreds of people. The tapestry has been embellished and added to as an art piece, paraded by groups of people, hung in galleries, and featured in workshops. To understand this project and the multitudes of hybrid narratives that surround it, I will first explain the origins of the tapestry. Years ago, I read the book The Red Tent by Anita Diamant, which inspired the creative vision that led to the creation of a tapestry for my wedding that was constructed from fabric given to me by important women in my life. Prior to my wedding, I shared my idea for this tapestry with women and requested that they send me fabric that carried stories, history, or blessings. A group of women friends helped me to sew the fabric together and collect the stories in a scrapbook. I used the tapestry to parade with the women who attended the ceremony, including them in my rite of passage into marriage and as a symbol of the importance of women in my life and the bond that we shared. The power of this project was palpable from the beginning. Visually, the red colors of the tapestry were stunning and beautiful. Each donated piece of fabric had profound singular meaning in the story that it carried. A scarf my mother-in-law wore on her first date with my father-in-law, my great-grandmother's hand-stitched apron, a poem from my aunt, a red dress that belonged to a friend that died, all layered together to create an ecosystem that symbolically and literally represented the lives and the histories of women close to me. The women and I who collaborated to create the original tapestry realized quickly that my wedding was just the origin of the project and that we should open the experience of interacting with it to others. I first installed the Red Tent at a church as part of a month dedicated to fostering awareness of domestic violence. I included information to read about the project, a book to write comments, and a suitcase of art supplies and instructions to embellish or add to the project. I received news from the church that people were spending time with the tapestry by adding bits of fabric to it and using the space it was installed in to pray and reflect. The tapestry hung in the building for a month, then it was paraded during a service to honor the work of a local women's shelter. When I returned to the church, I discovered the book I left with the tapestry was filled with messages and spontaneous poetry inspired by the Red Tent. I attended the service and was humbled by the interest and admiration that people shared for the project. A woman approached me after the service and handed me a folded pink pashmina scarf. Her eyes were heavy with tears as she told me that she wanted me to add the scarf to the Red Tent in honor of her sister who was struggling to leave an abusive relationship. She hoped that by adding her scarf to the tapestry that the strength of other women might help to guide her sister through her current experience safely. I was humbled at the way that this tapestry had taken on a life and a meaning of its own. As I did workshops and parades with the tapestry, I continued to be humbled by the life of this project and the various ways that people intuitively used it as a memorial, as a place to meditate, as a keeper of secrets and history too difficult to carry on their own, and also as a place to share stories and to celebrate. In tandem with other women artists, I was invited to use the Red Tent to facilitate a week-long retreat for adolescent girls. Using the Red Tent as our inspiration, I coordinated an activity with a creative writer that we called Imagined Realities of the Red Tent. The directions for this activity were as follows. It's impossible to know all the stories that the Red Tent carries. Some of the stories are written, some have been passed on verbally, and others have been whispered into the fabric that creates the Red Tent. The power of these stories can be experienced even when they are not known. Spend time looking at the tapestry and find a contribution to it that is interesting to you. Imagine in detail the person who contributed the fabric or embellishment, then describe them in writing. Write a letter from this person to the group gathered here today that explains their contribution to the Red Tent and the story of the materials that they used. This exercise in creating imagined and hybrid narratives was rich and deep. Using our imaginations, we brought other women who were imagined but just as real as the people who contributed to the project into our circle. These imagined contributors to the Red Tent told their stories and gave blessings and advice. I've used the Red Tent project in various ways in my art therapy practice. I installed it for a year at the residential facility where I worked. The Red Tent brought its collected histories and hybrid narratives to this space and was a source of inspiration, beauty, and comfort for the staff and children. I used the concept of the Red Tent often in my groups with adolescent girls, who frequently fought and had trouble connecting to one another. Each adolescent in the group was allowed to cut off and wear a piece of fabric from the Red Tent on their wrist as a symbol of solidarity with other females. I overheard one of the girls explain to another as she pointed to her red bracelet that she refused to argue with her over petty stuff because she respected all women, since she was a woman of the Red Tent. Recently, I shared the Red Tent project in conjunction with coursework about women's development in a graduate art therapy class. The class helped me to spread the tapestry across the floor. The students chose to sit amongst the layers of tapestry, taking time to notice the vast collection of fabric offerings and embellishment that make up the tapestry. A friend had recently used the tapestry for several ceremonies and workshops, and I noticed new additions to the project. Each time I unroll the tapestry, I found new pieces to it that I haven't seen before. I'm so humbled by this ever-growing collaborative collection of shared histories and by the way that individuals are moved by the power of tangibly linking a piece of themselves to a collective. The Red Tent is a vessel for our stories, a place where they can be supported and honored alongside many other voices and shared together in the context of life.